it's Alice, and today I'm gonna tier rank every single classic that I have ever read. Mostly just because I think it will be fun, and also I'm kind of like in a chatty mood today, so let's chat about some classics. Now, this is all just for fun, and I just want to mention that I'm not coming at this from like an English lit academic viewpoint. I'm just a regular reader, and honestly, it's really not that deep. And you know, we can all like different things. We're all friends here. It's all fine. I'm just mentioning it because there's something about classic books that gets certain people really fired up, which I think is mostly funny, but I just want to put it out there. This is just for fun. It's really not that deep. We're also not going to rank these from like 1 to 5 or whatever, because I've already rated all of the books on Goodreads. So if you want to see it there, you can check it out there. But I've come up with some different kinds of categories that we can put these books into that will maybe make me think about them a little bit differently, and we can discuss. I feel like it'll make sense when you see it, but it's just sort of to, you know, sometimes I will read a book and I will be like, that was amazing, I loved it, give it 5 stars, and I never think about it again. And I've sort of come up with categories that sort of fit those kinds of scenarios, I guess. Anyways, I've made 7 categories, and the first one is loved most ardently, so my favorites will probably be going in there. But I also have one that has altered my brain chemistry, for books that really changed how I think, because although a lot of my favorites can sort of go into both of those categories, they are a little bit different as well. And I wanted to have the altered my brain chemistry for books that really changed how I think, and I didn't just love them because I loved them. Then we have an underrated category, because I do occasionally read classics that I think are really underrated, so those will go in there. Then we have one that is just like pretty good, which is something that happens to me quite a lot, where I will read a book and I'll be like, okay, that was pretty good, and it was just pretty good. I feel like that's very like middling, but it was pretty good. I feel like that makes sense. Then we have one that is just okay, which is also a reaction that I have occasionally when I read books, and I'm just like, well, okay. Then we have the 2 at the bottom. We have Can't Remember to Save My Life and What Is This? And spoiler alert, I think a lot of these books are going to go into Can't Remember to Save My Life, because if a book doesn't give me a certain feeling, or like I remember the vibe, it will just be gone. Like, I can't remember it. I can't remember the plot points of my favorite books. So if I don't get like a certain feeling from it, I will just forget it. And I do think a lot of these books might be going into that, because sometimes I just read a book and I just never think about it again. All right, we're just gonna get into this. I have a lot of classics to go through, so I'm not gonna go like too much in depth into all of these. Like, we would be here all day if we would discuss all of them in depth. And some of them I'm just gonna run through very quickly. And honestly, the ones that I don't remember, I can't really explain anyway, because I don't remember them. The first book that we have is The Pearl by John Steinbeck. I don't remember anything about this book. I don't think I liked it that much, but this is gonna go straight into Can't Remember to Save My Life, because I can't remember it. Then we have Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman Capote, which I think a lot of people really like. I read this book and I thought, okay, because it didn't really do that much for me, and I just read it and I was just like, okay. Next we have a book that I don't know why, but I had such high expectations for this book. It's one of those books that I found in a bookstore and I just thought I was gonna love it, and then I read it and I just didn't really like it. I would say that this also goes into the okay category, because it was just kind of okay, but I was quite disappointed with it. But it was probably just because I had really high expectations for no reason. Then we have another Truman Capote book. We have In Cold Blood. I read this and I really, really liked it. It's a very in-depth nonfiction book, and it was fascinating. But it's one of those books that I thought would stick with me more than it has. So we're gonna put this into the pretty good category, because I wouldn't say that it's underrated, and I wouldn't say that it altered my brain chemistry or that I love it. So I feel like it was just pretty good. Then we have A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. I love this book. I'm gonna put this into Love Most Ardently because I think it's really good. It's also, I think it was the first or the second book that I read by Virginia Woolf, but it was definitely the book that really got me into her writing style. So I feel like I really love it because of that. Then we have Chronicle of a Death Foretold by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This was the first book that I read by this author. It's been ages since I read this book, and I don't remember a lot of it, but I do remember getting a really good vibe from it. So I'm gonna put it into pretty good. Then we actually have a play. We have A Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen. I read this in school and we like studied it. I don't think I loved it back then, but I have reread it since and it is quite interesting. So I'm gonna put this into pretty good as well. Then we have another Virginia Woolf. We have Mrs. Dalloway. This is my favorite Virginia Woolf, so I'm gonna put this into Love Most Ardently as well. These two are probably my favorite Virginia Woolfs, period. I have read some more, but these two are the ones that I really, really love. We then have a Hemingway book. We have The Old Man and the Sea. I didn't like this like at all. I feel like I might like it if I reread it though. I don't know, but to be honest, I kind of hated this book, so I'm gonna put this into What Is This? Because I don't know, I just couldn't really get into it. Then we have The House on Mango Street. I really liked this book. It probably hasn't made a huge impact on me in long term, so we're gonna put it into pretty good, but it's definitely worth a read. Then we have Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. This is such a sad book, and I don't know if I would say that it altered my brain chemistry or that I like love it, but I also don't feel like it's underrated. So we're gonna put it into pretty good, but I should maybe have another category for books that are a little bit better than pretty good. I don't know. Maybe I'll put this into Love actually, because it is a really, really good book. And Then There Were None is my favorite mystery book of all time, so I'm gonna put this into Love Most Ardently. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou is amazing. And I'm actually gonna put this into Altered My Brain Chemistry because this book really made an impact on me and I think about that book all the time. Like, it is so good and the writing is just amazing. Then we have another Virginia Woolf book. We have The Lighthouse. I thought this was pretty good. Didn't love it though, but it was pretty good. We also have The Priory by Dorothy Whipple. This is kind of hard to see, but this is also pretty good. It's not my favorite Dorothy Whipple, but it was really good. The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham. I'm gonna put into Altered My Brain Chemistry because I think about that book all the time and I think it's such a good dystopian book. And I do think a lot of my dystopian favorites are going to go into the Altered My Brain Chemistry because those are the books that make me think the most because they're just really thought-provoking in nature. I feel like that's the point of a dystopian book. We then have a poetry book. We have 20 Love Poems and a Song of Despair by Pablo Neruda. I loved this when I read it, but I only remember the sort of vibes from it and I haven't thought a lot about it since actually. So I'm gonna put this into pretty good because it is pretty good. Mayday by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Can't remember to save my life. We have another Persephone book. This is Miss Pettigrew Lives for a Day. I would say that this is pretty good. This is The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea, I think it's called. I can't remember this book at all. I'm not gonna lie. I want to read more by this author though because I want to find something that I really like, but I don't know. I can't remember that book at all. The Far Cry by Emma Smith. I feel like I really liked that book, but I actually can't remember anything about it, so I am gonna have to put it into can't remember to save my life. But I feel like of the Persephone books that I've read, I always enjoy them, but now that I'm thinking about it, I can't remember some of them at least, so maybe not all of them are that impactful, but they are usually quite enjoyable. Saranskill Comes Home is another one of those books that I do remember a little bit of it, but not much of it, so I'm gonna put this into can't remember as well. They Were Sisters by Dorothy Whipple though. I can't remember and I absolutely loved it. it's gonna go into Love Most Ardently because I think it's amazing. The next one is also Dorothy Whipple. This is Someone at a Distance. I would say that this is pretty good, but They Were Sisters is definitely my favorite. Then we have the complete tales and poems of Edgar Allan Poe. And I am actually going to put this into Altered My Brain Chemistry because I read this when I was like 16, 17, and I fell in love with Edgar Allan Poe. It says quite a lot about what kind of teenager I was. But like, I just loved it. And I feel like it's one of the books that like got me into English lit, and it's one of the first books that I read in English as well. And I just feel like it did so much for me, and I just loved it. And it made a really big impact on me, but it may have been because I was a teenager. Then we have a collection of like ghost stories. I'm gonna be honest, can't remember this book at all. I do think I enjoyed it though, but I can't remember any of the stories. Then we have The Kraken Wakes by John Wyndham. I would say that this is pretty good. Again, dystopian, quite freaky actually. Under the Jaguar Sun by Italo Calvino, I am going to put into underrated because I never hear anyone talk about it. I do think it is quite particular, and it's also technically an unfinished piece of work, but I loved it. I thought the writing was so good. It's a book that explores the senses, and the way that it's written is really visceral, and I think more people should read it because I think it's an interesting book to discuss. Cheerful Weather at the Wedding. Again, this is a Persephone book. Can't remember this book at all. Then we have The Magic Toy Shop. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about this book either, but I don't know if I feel like it's truly underrated, so I'm gonna put this into pretty good. I'm a little surprised by how this is going so far actually. I thought I would put way more into can't remember, but I guess I can remember quite a lot of these, and most of them are pretty good, which is pretty good. The Yellow Wallpaper and Other Stories I thought was really good, but I only remember the Yellow Wallpaper story. I don't remember any of the other ones, so I don't know if I should judge it only on the one that I remember. We're gonna put this into pretty good because I think it's pretty good. Then we have High Wages by Dorothy Whipple. This, again, is pretty good. Perfume is one of my favorite horror books, and it is, like, the writing in that book is so good, and it's just a really good book. I'm gonna put this into Love Most Ardently, actually. It might be one of my favorite horror books ever. Strangers on a Train, to be honest, I was a little bit disappointed in that book. I do remember it, but I wonder if the reason that I remember it is that because like the setup of that story is like a trope. I don't know if that's why I remember it, but I'm gonna put this into okay, because it's one of those books. The Catcher in the Rye I'm gonna do the same with actually, because I don't know. I read that in school. It wasn't really my jam. I just read it and I was like, okay. Dust Tracks on a Road. To be honest, I don't remember this book at all, which is a real shame, and I kind of want to reread it because I feel like I read it at a time when I just wasn't really in the mood for it. But I gotta be honest with you, I can't really remember this book at all, which is a shame. The Great Gatsby, I would say Love Most Ardently because I love it. The Bloody Chamber, I'm gonna put into pretty good because I do think that it's pretty good. This Side of Paradise by F. Scott Fitzgerald, gotta be honest with you, can't remember that book at all. Carol is one of those books that I think I went into it with really high expectations, and so I don't know if that's what like blew it for me, but I'm gonna put this into okay because I wasn't really that into it. Jane Eyre is gonna go straight into Love Most Ardently because I think that book is amazing. The Secret Garden, I'm also gonna put into Altered My Brain Chemistry, and the reason for it is, again, I read it when I was really young. This is my first book that I can remember reading, and I remember reading it and being like, oh my god, this is what reading is, and it's amazing. Thank you to the librarian who gave me this book because it really blew my mind. So I'm gonna put this into altered my brain chemistry. Then we have a Norwegian classic. It's Kristin Lavransdatter, which I read for school and I had to write a paper on it, and that might have like ruined it a little bit for me, but I don't know. It's very, very long. Maybe I would like it more now, but I'm gonna put this into okay, because I feel like that's what it was. Then we have another play that I read in school by Henrik Ibsen, which if you don't know, he is Norwegian. This is Per Gynt. I would put this into okay. It might have been because I read it at school. I don't really know. Then we have Flowers for Algernon, which is like a sci-fi classic. That book blew my mind, so I'm gonna put this into Altered My Brain Chemistry. I read it I don't know if it would have had the same impact if I read it now, to be honest, because I've read a lot of sort of those kinds of books, but this was one of the first ones that I read that just blew my mind. So I'm gonna put this into Altered My Brain Chemistry. Then we have Youth Without God, which is very underrated, I feel. If you like George Orwell, I would recommend that book because it has a lot of similar themes. Frankenstein, you may know, is one of my favorite classics, if not my favorite classic. I don't know what it is about that book, but it just does it for me. And although I do love it, I am gonna put it into Altered My Brain Chemistry because it's just one of those books. The Enchanted Wanderer, can't remember this book at all. Oh my god, Lolita. We're gonna put that straight into what is this, because what the hell is that book? I know a lot of people talk about like the writing in Lolita, blah blah blah. I gotta be honest with you, I don't really care because I just don't get that at all. Then we have Stoner, which I'm gonna put into Love Most Ardently because I read that last year and I do still think about it quite a lot. The Picture of Dorian Gray, I would say is pretty good. It's not one of those classics that really like fully did it for me, but it was very good. Sappho, this is actually a poetry collection. I'm gonna put this into underrated because I think more people should read it. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it really, but yeah, it's really, really good. Oliver Twist, I'm gonna put into Can't Remember because I think the only reason I remember plot points is because I like know the story, like most people know the story, but I can't remember anything about the experience of reading it, and I don't know, it just didn't really do it for me. Dracula by Bram Stoker, I'm gonna put into pretty good because it was pretty good. I liked the vibes, but it was a little bit of a different kind of read than I thought it was going to be. Far From the Madding Crowd, I'm gonna put into Love Most Ardently because it's an amazing book. I love that book. I really need to reread it. Casino Royale, can't remember that book at all. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I'm gonna put into pretty good, but it is like a little bit better than pretty good, I would say. Ooh, then we have Little Women. This is one of those books. I have mentioned this before, and I know so many people love that book. I don't like that book at all, and the more I think about it, the less I like it. I do want to watch the movie because I think I would like it more in like a movie format, but I read that book and I struggled so much. It just was not for me, so I am gonna put it into What Is This? Nobody Come For Me. I don't want to hear it, but we're allowed to like different things, please. But yeah, it just wasn't for me, but I'm glad all of you love it. I'm happy for you. The next one is Ubik. This is a science fiction book, which is super, super weird. I really want to reread that book because I think that it will make more sense on a reread, but I am going to put it into underrated because I would like more people to read it so that they can discuss it with me because it's very interesting. Tess of the D'Urbervilles, I read and I liked it, but the more I thought about it, the less I liked it. So I'm gonna put it into, I don't know, I guess pretty good because it was pretty good. I don't remember having read this book at all, so this can go straight into Can't Remember. The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, I am gonna put into I feel like I'm just gonna put this into underrated, because I think if you like the Brontes, you should definitely read that one, but most people read the other Brontes. And everyone should read this one as well, because it is really, really good. Then we have like I think this was a short story that I read in school, Hills Like White Elephants. I do remember this one. It is Hemingway. And I think the reason that I got on with that story is because we discussed it at school, and that really helped me. And maybe that's the way with Hemingway for me. I need to discuss it. But I'm gonna put this into pretty good, I think. The Diamond as Big as the Ritz. Can't remember this book at all. Seasons of Migration to the North. I'm gonna put into okay, because it was just one of those books. Then we have Vathek. I'm gonna put this into what is this, because that is the feeling that I got when I finished it. Next we have some H.G. Wells. We have The Island of Dr. Moreau. I wouldn't say that this altered my brain chemistry or I loved it most ardently, and it also isn't underrated, so I'm gonna put it into pretty good. Wuthering Heights, I'm gonna put into love. I don't know if I would love it on a reread, but I did love it when I read it. I think I was really in the perfect mood for it. So I don't know if I will ever read it again. I really need to be in the right mood, because it's very, very dramatic. 1984 by George Orwell. You know this is going into altered my brain chemistry. I love that book. I think it's amazing. I think everyone should read it. It is a little bit of a struggle to get through, I would say, but definitely worth it. It's just such a good book. Then we have Treasure Island. I can't really remember this book, which is a shame. I should probably reread it, so I'm gonna put it into can't remember. Jamaica Inn, I would say, is pretty good. The Scarlet Letter, I hated that book when I read it. I don't know why, but I just could not get into it, so I'm gonna put it into what is this. This next one is also gonna go there because I read it and I was like, what on earth? Then we have a book I read quite recently. It's The Enchanted April. I'm gonna put this into okay, because it was just one of those books. I thought I would like it more, but yeah, I just couldn't get on with it. Then we have The Hunting Gun. This was pretty good. It's a translated book. Sense and Sensibility, I'm gonna put into Love Most Ardently, because I've thought about it a lot since I finished it. Pride and Prejudice is my favorite Jane Austen, so that's gonna go into Love Most Ardently. Obviously, it needs to go into that category. The Lord of the Flies, again, it's one of those books that I read in school, and because we discussed it, it really did a lot for me. So I'm gonna put it into Altered My Brain Chemistry. It's a book that I don't talk about a lot, but I just loved discussing it. I don't know if it was because of my teacher, like she was amazing, but yeah, I've thought about that book a lot. We then have a book by Dostoevsky. We have Notes on the Underground. Honestly, can't remember this book at all, so we're gonna put that there. Christmas Pudding, no idea what this is. Brave New World, I think is an excellent book. It sort of did the same thing for me as 1984, although I would say that I probably prefer 1984, but I'm gonna put this into Altered My Brain Chemistry. A Clockwork Orange is one of those books I thought I was gonna love, and I just didn't really get it. And I know that, like, I reviewed that book, and I remember some comments were like, you sort of have to, like, get into the language and the slang and all of that, and I was like, yeah, but I couldn't get into it. I don't understand it. So I'm gonna put this into what is this. I know a lot of people love that book, but I don't know, it wasn't for me. Madame Bovary, I mean, I guess I kind of remember it. I'm gonna put it into okay, because I feel like it was one of those books. It was quite a long time since I read it though. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, I'm gonna put into Love Most Ardently. It is one of those books that's kind of like taking a hit of acid. Not that I've ever done that, but I feel like that's what it would be like. It's very weird, but I really like it. The Dumb House, I would say, is underrated. I never hear anyone talk about the book. It is a little bit weird, but it's really good. Then we have Emma. I liked Emma, but it's not my favorite Jane Austen. So I'm gonna put it into pretty good. It is probably a little bit better than pretty good, but I feel like Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility are more up there for me. Inferno is a book that I read just because I wanted to be able to say that I've read it, which is really like, it's a weird motivation, but I read it, and to be honest, I didn't get that book at all. And I am gonna put it into what is this, not because it's a bad book, but because I didn't understand it. I had to like look up everything on Spark Notes because I couldn't understand what was going on. That's more on me, but yeah, I'm gonna put it into what is this. Persuasion, I'm also gonna put into pretty good. It's sort of on the same like line as Emma for me. Then we have these two Arthur Conan Doyle books. I'm gonna put into pretty good because they are pretty good. They're not my favorites, but they are pretty good. This next one, can't remember this book at all. Then we have this Christmas book. I'm gonna put this into pretty good as well. I'm just gonna zoom through the last of these because we're almost at the end and I feel like I've been talking a lot. The Chrysalids, I don't know if I feel like it altered my brain chemistry or I love most ardently. I'm gonna put it into pretty good, although it is maybe a little bit underrated as well. Then we have Thousand Cranes, can't remember this book at all. We have The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. I would say, I think this was kind of like, okay. For me, I can't really remember, but I think that's where I would put it. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, I would say is pretty good. The Haunting of Hill House, I would also say is pretty good. I'm surprised most of these are going into pretty good, and that I know we have a lot in the can't remember one, but I thought we would have, I don't know, I thought we would have more in that. Then we have The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. Absolutely love that one. These ones, cannot remember. Oh, I can't remember this because I read it quite recently. I'm gonna put this into okay actually because I didn't get on with it as much as I thought I would. This one, can't remember at all. These Christmas books went straight into, I don't know, somewhere in my brain that I can't access. This one I read and I thought I was really gonna like, but I'm gonna put this into okay because I thought I would like it a lot more, and then I don't know, it was just one of those books. War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, I'm gonna put into altered my brain chemistry, not because I would necessarily recommend it, but it altered my brain chemistry to read a book that was that long. Like, it's the longest book that I've ever read, and it did like do something to me, and it did something to my brain, even though I don't know if I would say that I loved it, but there you go. The Joy Luck Club, I would say, is pretty good. We've almost filled up the page, so I'm gonna have to scroll a little bit. I hope that's okay. 12 Years a Slave, I would say it's pretty good. It's better than pretty good, but I don't know if I feel like it altered my brain chemistry or I like absolutely loved it. We Have Always Lived in the Castle, I would say is pretty good. I think I went into that with slightly high expectations, and that maybe wasn't the best idea, but there you go. To Kill a Mockingbird, I'm gonna put into Love Most Ardently because that book is absolutely amazing. Anna Karenina, also Love Most Ardently. It's an excellent, excellent book. It is my favorite Tolstoy, and I guess it also kind of altered my brain chemistry, but I would say that it fits better into the love category. The Wild Swans, pretty good. Ghostly Tales, pretty good. I do remember some of the stories. Handmaid's Tale altered my brain chemistry. I think that book is so good. I also think the show is really good, but the book is just, it has a particular vibe that is just absolutely amazing. Then we have another Norwegian classic. It's The Ice Palace. I'm gonna put this into underrated. I wish more people would read that book. You also have this beautiful edition in English that is much prettier than any of the Norwegian editions, so more people should read it. This one I'm gonna put into pretty good. I remember the writing style. I really liked it, and it reminds me that I need to read more by this author. This one, can't remember at all. This one, can't remember at all. Another Norwegian classic, this is The Lake of the Dead. Again, a little bit underrated because I never hear anyone talk about Norwegian classics outside of Norway, so I would recommend them. Young Anne by Dorothy Whipple, I actually can't remember that well, but again, I always enjoy the Persephone books, so I feel a little sad to put that there, but there you go. The Little Mermaid is pretty good. We're almost at the end. Animal Farm altered my brain chemistry. Absolutely amazing. The Honjin Murders, I would say is like, okay, because I don't really know about that book. It was just one of those books that, yeah, I don't know. Then we have this by Edgar Allan Poe, which was pretty good. And lastly, we have The Color Purple, which is more of like a modern classic. I would put this into altered my brain chemistry because I read it very recently and I feel like it did a lot for me and it was just absolutely amazing. One of my favorite books that I've read this year. It was fantastic. Alright, so this is what we're left with. Again, I'm surprised that not more of them went into the can't remember category, although we do have a lot of books there, but I don't know, I guess I remember more of them than I thought. But again, a lot of the things that I remember are like the vibe or the feeling of it and not necessarily plot points. But yeah, this was actually quite interesting. I should have maybe had a category that was like a little bit better than pretty good, because there is like a lot between pretty good and absolutely loved. But yeah, this was interesting. I did go through these very quickly, so I'm wondering if I'm gonna like kick myself when I'm editing this because I misplaced something and I disagree with myself when I've thought about it a little bit. But I thought this was enlightening. I thought that I wouldn't remember more books, and I thought maybe I would put more books into the loved category. A lot of them are just like pretty good, which I guess kind of makes sense. Either way, that's gonna be the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it, even though it was maybe a little bit different. I would love to know what books you would put into the altered my brain chemistry category, because I don't know, I would like to read more classics like that. And I would also love to know what you would put into the what is this category, just for fun. Like, I think it would be interesting to hear your thoughts. As always though, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you soon. Bye!